Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be doing something a little different. Usually I'd be showing off a game project or something, but this might tie into that, but today I'm going to be talking about a mechanic that a lot of people might take for granted. And that's the little number in the bottom corner of the screen that tells you what place you're in a racing game. It's one of those features where you expect it. Games have been doing it for years, so, it's not something that's impossible. But I'd like to discuss a process that was required to add a placement system for my own project. And also, we're going to get into lap tracking, because I want to solve some problems that other racing games have had when it comes to tracking what lap you're actually supposed to be on. And there's been a lot of games that have been exploited just because of, I don't know if it's lazy programming or whatever, but you've got big AAA racing games with really big major checkpoint exploits. So I want to cover how I also sought out to prevent that from being an issue as well. But let's tackle the first thing, which is how the heck do we figure out what place a character is in, So, let's get into it. So, I'm going to use my drawing tablet here. It'll simplify things. And you know what? It'll be kind of nice. So, let's say we got a racetrack, right? Let's make this brush bigger. Like, way bigger than what it is. Okay. I don't know. Okay, let's just pretend that's a racetrack. It's nice, blurry, and fuzzy. And we need to, be able to track this thing. So, we need to be able to know what part of the track the player is actually on. So, let's draw out our checkpoints here. So you got let's say this is okay, we gotta change colors and let's say this is terrible diagramming, but I can draw, so it's great. So let's say that's checkpoint 1, and then let's do checkpoint 2, and because checkpoints are pretty common. They let you know, they track your progress in a race in most racing games. And in games like Crash Team Racing, Mario Kart, if you fall off the map, you will probably reset back to a checkpoint. So you gotta make sure that you got a few checkpoints to and let's add a checkpoint there just to cover our bases. Okay, so let's label them. Let's get another color. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, I don't know why, but Crash Team Racing would do a thing where they would actually let you skip checkpoints. So let's say you go through checkpoint 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you could get out of the bounding zone somehow, it was actually possible if you just touched the area of another checkpoint to be able to just skip to that checkpoint. Then the game thinks that you're on that checkpoint, and then you're able to do some pretty crazy stuff. And I've got one example here. Now this won't be the best quality, but it's Twitter videos, so what are you going to expect, right? But you had this bug where doing this somehow brought you close enough to get into a checkpoint that you weren't supposed to be in, and then it let you completely skip most of the map and do this, right? And I think Mario Kart Wii had like some similar issues. There's like people who have gone into a lot of detail on why those bugs work and, you know, the rules of each game's lap system. But I wanted to make sure that that could not be a thing that could be done. That's not a thing I wanted to test for. I just want to be able to design a track, place the checkpoints, not have problems like that. So I added a requirement. So the requirement is that if you go to get to register into checkpoint 2, you need to have gone through checkpoint 1. Actually, you know what? No, that's not even accurate. So to get through checkpoint 2, I have these things called, let's just call them checkpoints, just to make it confusing. But no, each checkpoint required you to have a certain score. They would award you a score. So if you go through checkpoint 2, you get awarded a point. You go through 3, you get given another point. And each checkpoint has a required amount of points you need to be able to register that checkpoint. So if, let's say for example, you go from checkpoint 1 to 6, checkpoint 6 is going to be like, yeah, no, obviously you haven't gone through all the other checkpoints because you do not have enough points to, you don't match my requirements. Go back and do those other checkpoints first. So if somehow you skipped from checkpoint 1 to 6, you are now going to have to drive all the way back to the checkpoints you missed and then drive back to 6. And if you're a speedrunner or whatnot, that's not going to be very productive for you. To get to checkpoint 2, you need 1 point. To get to checkpoint 3, you need 2 points. To get to checkpoint 4, you need 3 points. And yada yada yada. So, and then when you go back to checkpoint 1 for a lap to register, we've got 8 checkpoints, so you need 8 points for the lap to register. Okay, great. So you've got a checkpoint system that does not let you skip other checkpoints. I guess in games where you can do that, the way they, I guess, are structured is, I guess they don't want to worry about having to properly set point requirement for every checkpoint or something. Maybe that's it. And they just want to be able to place the checkpoints, and if you die, you go to that checkpoint. No more configuration, you just place the checkpoint and you're done. That's that. Whatever. And then they just make it so that, oh, as long as you've gone to the last checkpoint, then the lap will count. But then you got a game like Lego Racer, where it's got a bug, a pretty major one, where if you drive in reverse to the checkpoint before the starting line, and then drive back to the starting line, the lap will count. So I don't know why games kind of, you know, get lazy with the checkpoint system there. I don't know, maybe they got their reasons. But I decided to just make it so that, no, you need to go through every single checkpoint. None of this allowing to skip checkpoints. I guess in other games they just decide, you know what, we'll let walls, invisible barriers, and all that stuff be the deterrent for getting to checkpoints you're not supposed to be. But in my case, I was like, you know what, let's just not make that an issue. Let's just design this right from the start. And even if someone can eventually, you know, sequence break my map, they will have to still do the track properly for the lap to count. Okay, so now that we've rambled a bunch about the checkpoint system, let's talk about how we figure out where you are on the track and what place you're in. So, I had to do something pretty interesting where I need a way to compare racers against each other and, you know, figure out, you know, what place they're in. Seems simple enough, right? So I need a way to make it so that I could compare racers against each other. So, and I was like thinking of all sorts of math and stuff, and like, okay, how the heck am I going to figure this out? I need some kind of reference point to figure out where the racers are on the track. So, the best solution I came up with was to place a bunch of points. And this is where it's going to get really freaking technical. I don't know how to simplify my answer to this problem to people who are non-programmers, so from this point, if this goes completely over your head, I'm sorry. But I'm going to try my best to not talk too much alien language here. So, I had to basically draw a bunch of dots on the map. So, just draw a bunch of dots. And I'm just going to kind of get sloppy with this because we don't want this to take ages. So all these purple markings are reference points on the racetrack. And if you're driving across the track, basically whichever dot you're closest to, that's where you are on the track. I basically traced out the track with a bunch of dots. So based on which dot you were on the map, or based on which dot you were closest to on the map, I'm able to take that dot and know exactly where you are in the map. Okay, great. So, how do I represent this in the game now and compare it against other racers? So, each racer has a few stats. Their place and lap points. So I explained the lap point concept for, letting checkpoints know how much of the track you've done already. Okay, but then we also got something called a lap rating. So what the heck is a lap rating? So basically, I don't know how many dots I drew here, but let's say I have 100 dots in the track. The lap rating will basically be based on a percentage of that. So if you're halfway through the track, you would have like a lap rating of 50. So you're 50% of the track. And I would compare these lap ratings to other racers that are also racing the track to figure out, okay, who's in first, who's in second, who's in third, yada yada yada, all based on, a bunch of dots that have been drawn in the map. And there's a few things I did to automate the process of this, which is, I have an AI racer, well, I guess not an AI racer, but I have an AI go around the track really fast and draw a bunch of these dots for the purpose of tracking laps. And once all those dots are drawn, I now have a bunch of dots to reference against when actually racing. Now, I've explained all that, and I'm looking at OBS, and I've been rambling for a while. I was expecting this to not be this long, but you know what? We'll see how this goes. This is like the first time I've actually gone out and decided, you know what? Let's try and explain something. Well, not being a person who I'm I'm not the type of person who can probably be a teacher. I don't know. But I'm not claiming to be a teacher here. I just want to, you know, describe how I got a lap system to work and function. Because it caused me quite a bit of headache. If you want to quickly take a look at how this functions here, I've got a whole bunch of old GIFs here of just, you know, different parts of this project that I worked on. So let's take a quick look at this GIF here, or this recording here, where the circle is going around and it's creating a bunch of data, creating those dots I talked about, and it's not showing them visually, but it is tracking a bunch of different positions as it goes around this track. And these positions are going to then be used to, you know, track where the player is in the race, and then I can assign them a lap rating to compare against other players and figure out who's in first, second, third, fourth, whatever. So, just two basic concepts is, for the checkpoint system, I make it so that each checkpoint requires that you've gone through other checkpoints. Simple concept. Rather than the concept of, oh, you touched me? Okay, well, I'm relying on the fact that the designers don't let you actually get to me early, so yeah, you touched me, so therefore you are allowed to go through me, and I will count your lap once you go to the finish line. Instead, it's like, nope, you need a certain amount of points by the end of the lap. If you do not have those point requirements, I'm not awarding you a lap. And then to track the place of a racer, I have an AI go around and draw a bunch of dots around the map. And then based on which dot you are closest to in the map, I'm able to triangulate where you are on the map and figure out what percentage of the track you've completed and compare that against other racers. So yeah, that's basically that. And I guess let's quickly demonstrate just how a race functions. If I can even find a controller. I don't know. I guess I don't need to find a controller. But yeah, let's run Unity. Let's run the project. And because you're running in the editor, stuff might flash blue for a moment. That's because it's compiling shaders and whatnot. Kind of does it on the fly. Alright, so here's a map. We got this AI going through the map, and let's actually just unmaximize that for a sec. See if I can get out of here, and let's check out the scene view. And we can actually take a look at the system I just talked about. We've got all these red lines that you can see. These red lines are used to, again, figure out where the racer is in the track. In some cases, it's actually not 100% perfect. Like in this case, it kind of curves. But for the most part, these little blips are not noticeable. And whichever, or not noticeable in gameplay anyway. And whichever red position that you are closest to, that will allow me to triangulate where you are on the map. And all that fun stuff. Isn't that cool? Oh yeah, and then we got our flyby camera going around here. And the idea is that every track is going to need to have functioning AI, so if for whatever reason tracing out the track breaks, or there's a bit, then there's a bigger problem in the map that needs to be fixed. And as long as the AI can actually, as long as AI players can drive through this tracing function should also work fine. So let's actually play the race now. And we can actually turn on the gizmos here. You'll see a few other things here, so you'll see like the nav mesh and all this other stuff. Oh, some of this stuff is actually translating weird. But yeah, we can drive around and kind of see the lines. And if I like, let's see, let's let someone pass me. So if I let some people pass me, they are closer to lines that are further ahead in the track. So that allows me to be tracked as in 5th place. And for the most part, if for some reason 2 players happen to be equal distance away from a line, it still somehow manages to work out well in the end. So let's turn off the gizmos for a sec here. Now I'm playing this game with mouse and keyboard. I'm not a mouse and keyboard guy, but I don't want to walk into the other room and grab a controller at the moment. Uh-oh, I'm crashing into stuff. But yeah, let's actually just, I'm just gonna stop there. And let's take a look. Oh yeah, the other thing too is I also have to program a wrong way thing. So if you start going, if your lap rating starts actually dropping down, I'm able to detect that, hey, you're actually making backwards progress. And I'm going to tell you that you're going the wrong way. So, yeah, if we start driving this direction, the game will start telling us that we're driving the wrong way. The moment we start making forward progress, again, it'll stop telling us that we're going the wrong way. So, there's fun stuff like that too. And let's actually take a look at how some of this data ends up looking. So I mentioned I track a bunch of points, so I got something called a lap tracker. And do I actually... let's open up, let's click debug here. I think this will actually expose more things. Positions, there we go. So we got all these grayed out positions here. If I let's focus on here. And these are every single position on the map that it traced out. So if we are close to any of these positions, this allows us to be able to triangulate where the player is. And we've got, holy crap, okay. This map has got 2,111 different points that it traced out. Holy moly. And another thing I ended up having to do here to address a bug that I had was if you got too close, okay, it looks like the race is over. But if you ever got too close to other points, even though your lap wasn't completed or whatnot, or you just started a new lap, sometimes you drop to 8th place right when you're about to cross the starting line again. And that's because you were starting to get close to points that were near the beginning of the track, and because you're near the beginning of the track, parts of the game thought you were making a bunch of backwards progress, that you were no longer going to the track properly anymore. So I had to lock different points to different checkpoints. So let's take a look at the checkpoints. I really hope that anything I'm saying makes sense, because it's hard to know. I'm just kind of doing this off the cuff here. So each checkpoint has a thing called owned positions, and we can see all the different points that this checkpoint owns. So if you're nearby any of these positions and you are in this checkpoint, then you will actually be allowed to have your placement use this data. If we get to checkpoint 2, you know, we've got more points. So if you're in checkpoint 2, then when we're trying to figure out what place you're in, then we use this data. And then checkpoint 3, when we're trying to figure out what place you're in, we're allowed to use this data. So, let's talk more about the actual lap rating. Let's actually look at some raw code here. So, let's go to the lap tracer. You got a method called, oh, that's not what I want to do, called get lap rating. And look at this complicated stuff. So, I'm going to try and explain this in a way that doesn't get, again, too complicated, but we actually got some code here that I no longer use. I can actually get rid of that, but let's look at this code. So, we got a thing called increments. Actually, lap reward's not being used either. Cool. We just cleaned up some code. So, first value we need to do is, I guess we get a value called increments. And that is the player's lap points divided by how many racing points are within the entire track. So, a racing point is a checkpoint. Let's make that clear. A racing point is a checkpoint. So we divide the player's current lap points by the amount of checkpoints that are in the entire track. So that'll give us a percentage value. Then we have another value called checkpoint completion. So that'll be the closest index. So I guess we got to describe what is an index in this case. Well, the index is basically where the player is in the current checkpoint that they are currently participating in. So, I guess up here we got a chunk of code here that gets the closest index and the closest vector that the player is nearest to. The closest index in this case references where the player is in the track. Okay, cool. Based on the current checkpoint that they are participating in. The closest vector is the closest position that they are nearest to. Okay, maybe that made sense. I don't know, let's continue. So anyway, we tell the player the closest position that they're closest to, and the closest index that they are closest to. Cool, cool. So anyway, we already discussed this. We discussed... Oh, so now we got checkpoint completion. So it's the closest index divided by the amount of positions that were assigned to the current checkpoint that the player is participating in. So This will get a percentage value of how much of the current checkpoint has been completed. So you can almost think of each checkpoint like a mini lap to some degree. Each checkpoint is kind of treated like its own miniature lap. But not really. But kinda. I don't know if this makes any sense, but we're going down a rabbit hole here. So, you know, let's continue on. So now, we actually figure out the lap completion. How much of the lap has the player actually done? So lap completion is the increments value plus how much of the checkpoint we have completed divided by player controllers, or divided by the amount of racing points that are in the entire track. So racing points again are checkpoints. Just to make that clear again. Okay, then we need to figure out how many laps the player has actually completed. So in this case, we got a ternary operator. So basically it's a single line if statement. So I had to add a few conditions here, because if the player has completed the circuit, we no longer want to track their laps. When a player has actually completed the racetrack, I actually stop tracking where they are in the track, and the actual time it took for them to complete the track ends up becoming how I figure out if they're in first, second, third, whatever. Because at that point, we got a definitive, finalized value I can use, and that's just how long it took for you to drive through the track. So we have a boolean here that says, okay, if the player has completed the circuit, which means they've completed the race, they are done, they've done all their laps, we're just going to base it on how long it took for them to drive through the entire track. Otherwise, it's going to be how many laps they've completed minus lap penalties. So what are lap penalties now? You get a lap penalty if you drive the opposite direction over the starting line. So let's say you go and you complete a lap, right? If you decide that you want to turn around and drive backwards, you will start making reverse progress. And you'll get a lap penalty, and your lap will actually go back to lap. Let's say you're on lap 1, you go to lap 2. If you decide to drive backwards over the finish line, you will now be back to lap 1. And if you drive back over the starting line again, you will be rewarded your proper lap again. And the reason why I use a lap penalty and I don't just subtract from the amount of laps completed is because I ran into a problem where I couldn't figure out if you legitimately made that progress or not anymore. So if you go back over this finish line, I just, subtract a lap, oh great, now you gotta do an entire lap again. And I've just screwed you. So rather than do that, I use a lap penalty. I can differentiate it and realize that, oh, it's a lap penalty. I can use this if the player is just, being stupid and driving backwards. So if you drive back over the starting line, if you have any lap penalties, I will reverse that, get rid of the lap penalty. You're good to go again. Okay, now that we've got that covered, now we've got a rating. This is where we actually figure out, the player's lap rating. So the player's lap rating is the combination of the laps completed plus how much of the current lap they've completed. So basically how many previous laps we've completed plus how much of the current lap we have completed. Great. Okay. So we can give that value to the player, and then now we can reference that compare it against every player and figure out who's in what place. Who's in first, who's in second, who's in third, fourth, fifth, whatever. Awesome. Okay. Now that we've completed all of that, I don't know. Hopefully this was insightful. Hopefully I made sense. Hopefully I didn't come off too rambly. And hopefully, you know, again, this was interesting to just, you know, look at. And maybe if this just seems like super, you know, unstructured and just nothing made sense and whatnot, you know, maybe there's a way to make this make sense. Or maybe creating a lap system and a checkpoint system is something that we just take for granted and is actually just really complicated. I don't know. I just know it took a lot of work for me to get this functioning. But, yeah. If you like this video, feel free to like it. And if you want to keep up with any future content, feel free to subscribe. And if you want to be notified of any future content, feel free to click the bell notification icon. But with that all said, I'll see you guys next video.